Richard Dawkins, Best Points. Secular content, YouTube channel. Listen, I like seeing these little best hits, top arguments, top gotcha moments, hit slaps. Well, Dawkins has some for himself, and I want to check those out with you. Be sure to subscribe, like this, join the community. I want to hear from you in the comments. Let's have some fun with Richard Dawkins. You know what I mean? Here we go.
It is true that Christianity has adopted many of the best values of humanity, but they don't belong to Christianity or indeed to any other religion. I think it would be very sad if it were true that you really did need religion in order to be good. Because if you think about it, what that would mean would be either that you get your morals and your values from the Bible or the Quran or some other holy book, or that you are good only because you're frightened of God, because you don't want to go to hell or you do want to go to heaven. Now, as for getting your morals from the Bible, I very sincerely hope nobody does get their morals from the Bible. It's true that you can find the occasional good verse, and the Sermon on the Mount would be one example, but it's lost amid the awful things that are dotted throughout the Old Testament, and actually throughout the New Testament as well, because the fundamental idea of New Testament Christianity, which is that Jesus is the Son of God who is redeeming humanity from original sin, the idea that we are born in sin, and the only way we can be redeemed from sin is through the death of Jesus. I mean, that's a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea that God, this paragon of wisdom and knowledge, power, couldn't think of a better way to forgive us our sins than to come down to earth in his alter ego as his son and have himself hideously tortured and executed so that he could forgive himself.
So that he could forgive himself. No, but seriously, the human sacrifice element is so archaic and ancient. We cringe when we think about the Mayans and what they did on the pyramids. We cringe when we think about how Phoenicians sacrificed their children. We go, ooh, we read Abraham's story and we go, oh, it was close, but you know what? God spared him. And it's like, do you not see this as the same rewrite of Iphigenia and the various other myths that are out there? Is Ino and Athamas with Phrixus and his sister Helle. Hellespont is named after her. She fell off of the golden ram. The golden fleece ram came down to save them. When a fake oracle from Apollo was sent to the father that they must sacrifice their children, we go, whoa, that's ridiculous. And then God sent his only son to be a sacrifice, and we're like, wow, I'm so thankful for it. It's like, dude, that's your center of your theology? God.
Here we have this phenomenally sophisticated information processor, which is the cell. Am I really to believe that that information processing capacity simply came about by the laws of nature and random processes without a mind?
Yes.
Well, absolutely. I find that impossible to believe as a mathematician.
I know you do. This is called the argument from personal incredulity.
I remember this debate when I was a Christian. I did not like Richard Dawkins at the time. And I get it. I get why the Christian's giving the pushback. But it's like you're talking to the actual expert on biology, and it's like, damn, can you imagine the guy knows a thing or two about this?
I, as an atheist, my friends as atheists, lead thoroughly worthwhile lives, in our opinion, because we stand up, look the world in the face up to the fact that we are not going to last forever. We have to make the most of the short time that we have on this planet. We have to make this planet as good as we possibly can and try to leave it a better place than we found it.
Now, to some degree, you've already answered this, but there is a follow-up question. I'm going to go to that now. It's from Rebecca Ray.
Okay, my question for you today is, without religion, where is the basis of our values? And in time, will we perhaps revert back to Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest?
Richard Dawkins, you can answer that and I'll bring in Cardinal Pell.
I very much hope that we don't revert to the idea of survival of the fittest in planning our politics and our values and our way of life. I've often said that I'm a passionate Darwinian when it comes to explaining why we exist. It's undoubtedly the reason why we're here and why all living things are here. But to live our lives in a Darwinian way, to make a society a Darwinian society, that would be a very unpleasant sort of society in which to live. It would be a sort of Thatcherite society. And we want to, I mean, in a way, I feel that one of the reasons for learning about Darwinian evolution is as an object lesson in how not to set up our values and our social lives. Now, in the case of the cosmos...
Now, that's interesting. To live life contrary to how we came to be where we're at. Of course, we're evolved to a point where we're thinking, you know, we're going to have ethical values and set up systems that do not operate based on the typical nature in which we came to be. That's interesting, which someone might come in and bring religion in as a utility to control, to maintain, to structure a society and whatnot. But do you need to have some form like that in order to have a society that operates and functions? These are the debates that happen with a lot of Christians out there.
Freak accident or design. The point that I've made over and over again is that even if we don't understand how it came about, it's not helpful to postulate a creator, because the creator is the very kind of thing that needs an explanation. And although it's difficult enough to explain how a very simple origin of the universe came into being, how matter and energy, how one or two physical constants came into existence, although it's difficult enough to think how simplicity came into existence, it's a hell of a lot harder to think how something as complicated as a god comes into existence, difficult enough to think of how a deist god comes into existence, and even more difficult to think of how a Christian God who actually cares about things like sin and gets himself born of a virgin. Mm-hmm. Why we exist, you're playing with the word why there. Science is working on the problem of the antecedent factors that lead to our existence. Now, why in any further sense than that, why in the sense of purpose, is, in my opinion, not a meaningful question. You cannot ask a question like, why do mountains exist, as though mountains had some kind of purpose. What you can say is, what are the causal factors that lead to the existence of mountains? And the same with life, and the same with the universe. Now, science over the centuries has gradually pieced together...
I like that he brought up natural, like, resources, like mountains, water, whatever. And then when you ask the question about humans, we are the ones giving the meaning and purpose and the why. We want to know the why. But, like, when we look at those other things, we go, why do mountains exist? Children will answer that, you know, so that we can climb them and have fun on them and see very far or whatever. It's like, that's not really why, but okay.
Together, answers to those questions. Why in that sense? It's true that there are still some gaps, but surely, Cardinal, you're not going to fall for the God of the gaps trap of saying that, that religion is going to fill in those gaps which science has so far not yet answered.
Yes, exactly.
But you've suddenly leapt from sophisticated discussions of the origin of the universe, where one can have a proper discussion about whether some sort of cosmic intelligence could have set forth the laws of physics, and you suddenly jump to a man who lived 2,000 years ago, was born of a virgin, rose again from the dead.
Well, I only did that because you mentioned it first at the beginning.
I think that's petty. By comparison with the grandeur of the universe. I mean, to put my point again, do you really think that the creator of this magnificent edifice of the universe, the expanding universe, the galaxies, he really couldn't think of a better way to get rid of the sins on this one little speck of dust than to have himself tortured? He's the one who's doing the forgiving after all. Couldn't he just have forgiven?
That's actually what Dr. James Tabor recently said about pre-Pauline Christianity, was that if you have a repentant heart, a change of heart about, you know, behaviors or things that you acted badly, and to do good, God forgives. There's no blood necessary, no sacrifice necessary. The sacrifice is you changing and turning and trying to do better. Until this atonement idea starts to make its way in, it's like, what's going on here?
Question why is not necessarily a question that deserves to be answered.
Thank God I'm an atheist. Q&A.
So there are all sorts of questions that people can ask, like, what is the color of jealousy? That's a silly question.
Exactly.
Why is a silly question? Why is a silly question? You can ask, what are the factors that led to something coming into existence? That's a sensible question. But what is the purpose of the universe is a silly question. It has no meaning.
Good.
I don't think it's a very important question whether Jesus existed. There are some historians, most historians think he did, some
They
historians
certainly
don't.
do. I couldn't find an ancient historian that didn't.
Well, there are one of...
Well, Richard Carrier, Robert Price, I believe Bruno Bauer himself at one point. If I'm not mistaken, it was Bruno Bauer. But there's been a few scholars that have, of course, Bruno Bauer be a little bit, in the past, but still contemporaneous. There are two, though they aren't like working within a facility, like a academic position somewhere. And I've heard that critique too. Oh, you can find the fringe PhDs here and there. They're not going to hold any positions ever. And I don't know if that's like, haha, gotcha, because I couldn't teach at an institution, or if it's the politics and the trends of what is permitted and welcomed to be taught at institutions. Say a professor was a mythicist, but they're willing to like present various views of historical Jesus studies. They're showing the various views, and they just say, hey, this is where I land at the end of the day. Would they get a professorship? Would they be able to teach in these academic institutions, which are often, funded by, Christian and not secular sources, often Christian institutions, and that's difficult. That's difficult to be honest and say, oh, yeah, they would hire them. I don't know if they would.
But I don't really care, actually, precisely because it's petty. If you could possibly persuade me that there was some kind of creative force in the universe, there was some kind of physical, mathematical genius who created everything, the expanding universe, devised quantum theory, relativity, and all that. You could possibly persuade me of that. But that is radically and fundamentally incompatible with the sort of God who cares about sin, the sort of God who cares about what you do with your genitals, the sort of God who is interested, who has the slightest interest in your private thoughts and wickednesses and things like that. Surely you can see that a God who's grand enough to make the universe is not going to give a tuppenny cuss about what you're thinking about and your sins and things like that.
So you think that morality is not important?
Of course I don't think morality is not important. I'm a human being.
Sounds like you're saying it isn't important.
I'm a human being, and I live in a society of human beings, and within...
The fact that he immediately thought that he thinks it's absurd that a God cares to look and see what you're thinking, what you're doing with your genitals, the whole nine. And then he goes, oh, so you don't care about morality. It's like, bro, I'm trying to say you don't need... Why would you think a cosmic deity of some sort that created all of this? We're no different than ants, okay? Maybe even worse off than ants are to us, from us to whatever this thing you're trying to describe you call God. And you think it honestly gives a shit about the little thing? And then the ant turns to the other ant and goes, so you don't care about morality? It's like, this is the dumbest kind of thing to honestly keep rehashing.
In a society of human beings, morality is, of course, important. But we are one of billions of planets on a huge scale. And a cosmic God who bothers about this kind of human scale is not the kind of God that is compatible with a scientific view of the universe. It's a medieval view. In the God delusion, I made a 7-point scale. 1 is I'm totally confident there is a God. 7 is I'm totally confident there is not a God. 6 is, to all intents and purposes, I'm an atheist. I live my life as though there is no God. But any scientist of any sense will not say that they positively can disprove the existence of anything. I cannot disprove the existence of the Easter Bunny, and so I'm agnostic about the Easter Bunny. It's in the same respect that I'm agnostic about God. I think there's something...
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I always get that, and you'll notice in the comment sections throughout a lot of my videos, when you bring up these things, they always have the alternative view they bring in. They go, well, you can't prove that it wasn't there. You can't prove that it wasn't. And it's like, oh, okay. So the reasoning is always backwards, typically.
Wonderful about standing up and facing up to a universe where we are increasing our understanding, and we throw away childhood obsessions, we throw away the sort of imaginary friend that comforts us when we're children, and we feel the need for some kind of parent figure to turn to. I think when we grow up, we need to cast that aside and stand up tall in the universe, and it's cold, and we're not going to last for it. We're going to die, and we face up to that. And I think that's a nobler way of getting through life than to pin your hopes on childhood illusions.
Is it okay to tell a child that God doesn't exist?
Richard Dawkins.
By the way, I'm not so sure. I mean, I get why people want there to be something beyond this. To me, life is a very emotional, it feels like a narrative. And you don't want the story to end when it ends. And I don't know if that causes people harm, that they hope that there's something beyond this. Some, yeah, when they think, oh, I'm looking forward to that, but nothing to do with this. But when this ends, to hope there's something beyond, I don't know that would harm people. If anything, it might comfort them in some way, a sense of controlling the trauma that might come up when they lose a loved one.
I think it's okay to tell a child the truth. But I would prefer to encourage a child to make up her own mind and to think about the evidence and to believe things when there is evidence. What I think is not okay, what I think is deeply immoral, is to tell a child that when she dies, if she's not good, she's going to go to hell. That seems to me to be mental child abuse and an utter disgrace.
That's the hard part, right? Is this afterlife. Once you bring in, oh, I hope that I see them after this and that there's something beyond. Oh, well, we have it for you, heaven or hell. And they, clearly no one wants to go to hell.
If you don't mind, can we spend a few minutes talking about God, if that's okay? So I'm just wondering, I too get asked at many lectures my view on God. And my typical answer is that, sure, there could be a God that's behind it all, and what we're doing as physicists, chemists, biologists, working out God's laws. And if that's how it is, I am thrilled to be part of that noble journey. I then add by saying, look, there's no evidence for that. I don't see any reason to believe that. And if what we're doing is just working out the laws of physics or chemistry or biology, and that's all that you need for a universe, I'm thrilled to be part of that journey. So the bottom line is, from a sociological, from a historical viewpoint, religion's very, very interesting, but it's kind of profoundly uninteresting to answer the deep questions, because I feel like all I'm doing is replacing one mysterious set of words framed scientifically with another set of equally mysterious words that are framed non-scientifically. Yeah. Now, I should say, after I say that, I always apologize, because I am all for hedging your bets. I'm not beyond that at all. What do you think of that view?
Well, I think that the sort of Newtonian, Newton thought that he was working out God's laws, and he was demonstrating the glory of God's mind when he worked out the laws of mechanics and so on. I'm not so at ease with that as you seem to be, because it does seem to me that if there is a supernatural, superhuman intelligence that worked it all out, in a way that undermines the entire scientific enterprise, because we are, maybe an evolutionary biologist feels this more strongly, the whole enterprise of evolutionary biology is to explain how you get prodigious complexity and design from virtually nothing. I mean, we hand over to physicists when we can go beyond the virtually nothing to the absolutely nothing. But if you start from start from quite an advanced level, bacteria, and work up to mammals and humans, we have a working theory which we know is true, which explains how you can go from great simplicity to prodigious complexity, and finally to the sort of complexity which is capable of designing things, of creating things, of working out how to do things. Well, if you are suddenly going to insert a designing machine, a creator, an intelligence at the root of the universe, you've just undermined your entire enterprise, because your entire enterprise has been to explain how you get to something complicated enough to do design. I think that religion teaches people to stop questioning. I'm sure you disagree with that, but the way I see it, it is such a privilege to be born at all. It's a very improbable event that either of us were born. We have the privilege of being in this universe for a few decades, and during that time it is an enormous privilege to be able to understand something about the universe in which we live, why we're here, why we were ever born, where we come from. And I think that is such a wonderful thing to be able to do, that I am hostile, I can get angry about competing accounts which seem to me to not encourage that kind of questioning, but instead to say, this is how it is, it's all written in the Holy Book, it was written 2,000 years ago, and that's the end of it. I think that deprives people. I think that is such a belittling, a demeaning view of the universe, and I think it's tragic that children are brought up with that when they could be brought up in a more open-minded way. So that's one reason for the anger. The other reason we've touched upon, it is that I do think that faith, unsupported by evidence, is a lethal weapon. Doesn't have to be, of course it doesn't have to be, but it can be. It's a weapon because possibly unscrupulous people can get hold of often young men and use them as weapons, use them as human bombs. And the only reason they can be deployed as human bombs is that they have been brought up from childhood onwards to believe implicitly, without question, that whatever the particular religion is, the details don't matter. The point is that they do believe that it is the will of God that they should detonate themselves and blow up a busload of...
This is intense to hear him say this, but it makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts about Richard Dawkins' views? What are your thoughts about the new atheists? Do you think that they were right on the money? Do you think they went a bit too far and weren't factoring in other elements? I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, but I think their criticisms of religion are often on point. But are they only focused on religion and there's much more to play? I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Richard Dawkins, classic, legend, clearly. He's got so much stuff we're going to keep covering, reacting. I hope you'll be part of our family by subscribing and hitting the bell. It's the simple, easy, free way, of course, to support what we're doing, to help grow the channel and help this insights be better known. More people come across this content. And of course, I'm reacting. I'm having fun just enjoying these videos along with you, and I appreciate those who join the journey. Like the video if you will. Drop a comment. I want to see what you have to say, and any other recommendations. I'm looking. I'm watching. Thank you, and until next time, see you then.